Maria Sharapova is here. She is a five-time Grand Slam tennis champion. She is one of the world's most recognizable athletes. She has been ranked #1 on 5 different occasions through her career. In 2016, she was suspended from competition for 2 years after testing positive for a banned substance. The sentence was consequently shortened to 15 months after court found that she bore no significant fault and didn't intend to cheat. She writes about that ordeal and her personal journey to the top of the tennis world in a book that she calls or titles Unstoppable, My Life So Far. I'm pleased to have Maria Sharapova back at this table. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be back.
I saw you about a year ago. A very different time.
A very different time. I remember this table and this setting. Yeah. It was my first interview.
So tell me what's happened that you look to as sort of indicative of where your future is.
Yeah. Well, the first step of being back on the court, back playing, has been incredible. It's what I wanted back when I was at this table. It's what I looked forward to, that competition that I miss so much, of playing the game that, that I've been doing since I was a young girl. And getting that back in April was extremely special. Certainly have had my ups and downs with injuries since that, and having that memorable U.S. Open just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So why was it memorable?
Memorable for a few reasons. One, because I hadn't played at the U.S. Open in a few years because of the suspension and because of previous injuries. And it was the first Grand Slam back after 19 months. And there's just something more in the air. There's a sense of excitement. There's nothing like going out and playing a primetime match at the U.S. Open.
Then you beat number 2. The number 2
seed. And I beat the number 2 seed. And just I felt like I came home to the hotel room after that match, and I felt happy. It was a really good feeling to have. The next day, didn't get much sleep. It was a late night match after the press, after the treatment and everything that you do and the recovery. You go to bed at like 2, 3 a.m. and I didn't want to sleep. I was so happy. And
then what happened?
And then I ended up going on in the 4th round.
So what happened to the game there?
What happened to the game? It was a physical match, and in the end, I just didn't have enough. I didn't play smart. Felt like usually in those situations, find myself playing with instinct. But I didn't feel like I had enough match play to really feel that way. I really, it wasn't smart in certain situations, and that was costly.
Now, did you get upset when you were not granted a wild card to play?
The French?
Yep.
I was sad. I wouldn't say upset. I understood the situation.
Which was your first tournament back?
Yeah, it would have been my first Grand Slam back. I understood the circumstance, and I knew that it was a tough decision, and therefore I couldn't be upset about it. I think I was sad because I wanted to be there, and just because the tournament is so special. And when you're a 2-time champion at that event, and it's a tournament that you really want to come back at as a Grand Slam, it was disappointing, but I understood it.
So can you say now to me, look, I had a tough time. I had to face a difficult issue. I had to be away from tennis. And now I'm back. I just beat the number 2 seed at the U.S. Open. I feel good about my health. I feel good about my game. I feel good about my future. I'm 30 years old.
I feel like this is a life lesson.
It's a what?
A life lesson.
Yeah, you do.
It is. I mean, very much so. I've overcome a lot in the last couple of years, and we talked about it in depth the last time I was here, and it was a difficult time. It brought out a lot of emotions and a lot of uncertainties, and I faced it head on, and I'm on the other side of it, and I'm
That's
back
my question.
and competing.
Are you on the other side?
I am. I feel like I am. I feel that I moved on. I feel that I've just being out on the court. It takes away everything else that goes on around me, because it's just me and what I have to do.
Are you happiest on the court?
Yeah, I love it there. Really do.
When you look ahead, is any part of your game that still needs sharpening?
A lot of things that I can take from the Open. Breakpoint opportunities, conversions, serving smarter, not giving them free points. Being a little bit more consistent. I thought I moved pretty well after not playing for a long time, so that was a positive, because the body's been struggling a little bit since I came back. But overall, yeah, I'm pretty happy with the future.
What are you thinking about young women and young men who are just getting into tennis, whether nobody's hardly as young as you were. I mean, you went away to a tennis academy between 7 and 9 years old, away from home, away from Russia, to Florida.
Right.
But looking at the experience you've had since then, tell us how important your footwork is. How important is the way you move on the court to becoming a first-rate player?
Right. It proved to be very important in the later stages
You're 6'2".
of my. I am 6'2", so that's already difficult as it is to move. But movement is a huge part of tennis. So many quick steps. I mean, now you see so many players sliding on the courts. I mean, on the hard courts, on the clay courts, I slide here and there.
Sure.
But on the hard courts, I barely do that, if not at all. But you see a lot of players doing that, and it's become quicker, it's become faster. Some of the surfaces, such as the grass court, the game has slowed down. The grass that was many years ago, it relies more on being in the point, getting yourself in the point, than the serve and return that you really counted on a lot. I mean, you still do, but not as much as in '04 when I won it.
Who's the most important influence on your tennis today?
A lot of people. I think everyone, as I grow older, you realize in every stage of your career you need different influences and different people, and what you needed as a teenager from a coach is very different to what you need today.
How is that?
I think when you're young, you need more. You need a little bit more discipline. Get your mind in the right direction.
Is it somehow what they call in the law in loco parentis, in place of parent?
It might be. It might be. But I always thought, like, I've matured and I've realized that if it's not you who wants it, then no one else will for you. But the team's
Parents
important.
can't give you that. You have to want it.
You have to want it. They can want it as much as they want.
Why you? And back to this my life so far. What was it inside you that made you want it? Yeah. Was it you loved it? Did you? I mean, because you talk about, it wasn't just winning for you. You wanted to defeat. It's a killer instinct, I think, or some variation of that. Right.
As part of the process of writing this book, I started by looking at all the journals that I've been writing since I was a young girl, and a lot of them were just these repetitive words of that I'm going to do well, I'm going to defeat this player, I'm going to play well, I'm going to concentrate, I'm going to focus. And I was probably 8 or 9 years old while I'm writing these words, and no one told me to keep a journal, no one told me what to say. It was sort of this self-esteem, confidence that I put on paper and in my mind, and I never shared it with anyone else. So I think it was, I don't know, it was this, I know I got an incredible opportunity. I think I realized it. Even though my parents didn't necessarily put that pressure on me, I wanted to deliver for them.
What's interesting here, too, is that you suggest you were not the quickest.
No. I'm still not.
And you're still not the fastest.
Not the fastest.
But you have stamina. Or you've had stamina.
Right.
The capacity to come after it, stroke after stroke after stroke.
It's like the repetition and the habit that you create with repetition. It was like when my mother was making me memorize these lines from Russian poets and Pushkin, and I mean, I was too young to really understand what they even meant. But for her, it was like a lesson that this is difficult and this is hard for you, and you might not know its meaning, but the fact that you're in your mind reworking these lines and phrases and in paragraphs and you're memorizing them, I developed this sense of discipline that ultimately take you to the court when you have to hit 500 balls at a time. Yeah,
and you also gave tribute to Nelson Mandela for this idea that it's not so much what's more important in life is the capacity to get up when you fall, because you will inevitably fall. That is the quote that I start with in the book. Yeah, I had that in my mind as I was writing the book, because I love reading, and I know that when you open a book, there's either a quote or a passage and a dedication, and so I thought every page of that book would be important, and I remember exactly where I contributed to each page. How much does all of the attention, all of the sort of recognition, all of the time you spend on branding and the companies you have, how much time does that take away from the betterment of your tennis game?
I wouldn't say it takes away. I think it gives me a chance to step back and do things that are different to what I do. Because when you're in your world, which for me is an athlete's world, a tennis player's world, you're in this bubble. You're always around the same people, and you're your team, and you rarely get out of it. And it's great in so many ways because your focus and determination goes onto this one thing and one path. But I do think it's important to branch out in things that you want to work on and things that you want to be a part of. And I want to grow. I mean, I've only known...
You're not going to play tennis all your life.
No. And I started when I was so young, and I know that will always be the best thing that I know how to do. But that shouldn't limit me from wanting to grow in other areas of my life.
You went to Sochi after Chernobyl, and you said if that hadn't happened, your life would have been different.
Right.
How would it have been?
Well, I think my parents would still continue living in Belarus,
right,
which was a very poor country. And I certainly wouldn't be playing tennis, and I wouldn't be living in the United States. So I would say very different.
Part of this book also is Serena,
right,
who just had a baby.
Yes.
Characterize the competition, because I'm not sure what the latest is, but at one point it was 19-2 in favor of Serena.
Yeah.
Does she have your game better than anybody? Does she have your number better than anybody? Or is she simply that good? She is the best?
I think it's both of those things, definitely.
She has your game in part. In other words,
I mean
she knows how to win against you.
Yes. Yes, and there are many things that she does better than I do, yeah.
Well, tick them off.
Yeah, tick them off.
What do you do better than she?
In terms of what do I do better than she? I think a lot of that is intangibles.
Yeah.
I mean, I think she hits harder than I do, even though I'm an aggressive player. She serves better than I do. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things. Yeah.
How much of the game for you is mental?
The game of tennis, a lot of it is mental.
And when we say that, what do we mean?
When I think of mental...
The will to win, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the mental aspect are things that you're not able to write down. The mental aspect of being in a situation when it's tiebreak in the third set, those are not things that your coach can teach you. Those are not... You begin playing by instinct. And a lot of tennis and sports are run by numbers, and there are facts and statistics and game plans, and you know where they're most likely going to serve based on their patterns. But when you get to that situation, you rely on your mind, your reaction, your experience, and that's all mental. Those are not numbers, because I always have this debate with my coach, because he's very much a numbers guy as well, and he pulls out the tablet, shows me all the statistics, and says tennis is very much about numbers. And I say, well, there are a lot of things that if you measure me against other players, if you take me to the gym and tell me to use this weight and do these squats or these sprints or take me on the treadmill for this length, I will not win against anyone. But I can go on the court and I can beat them. And so if you measure me against those numbers, you'd think I'd have no chance.
And so what's the difference?
That I have this will, and that I have this ability to know that it's not just about power, it's not just about strength, it's not just about endurance.
It's about the mind and the will to win and the ferociousness of your mental attitude.
I think also knowing that it's not about perfection. It's not always about being great, and something I say in the book. And it's like there's only a few handful of times in my career where I felt like I finished the match and it was flawless. Like everything happened according to plan, and I hit the patterns, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. But so many times I came off the court and I felt like I played terrible. Like I made a lot of mistakes. But what did I do to end up being on the winning end of things? And those are the matches that give me confidence.
You should read, and I'm plugging the book only because I read it and I thought it said something that's really incredible about him. Tom Brady, the quarterback for the Patriots, got a new book out called TB12, I think.
Is it the diet book?
It's more than a diet book. Okay. It's really an exercise book, but it's also an attitude book.
Okay.
Attitude book. Basically the sense that he was not the top draft pick. He never started in college or in the pros when he was expected to be the starting quarterback.
Yeah.
He worked his way up.
Yeah.
He was never the fastest. He was never had the strongest arm. He had none of those things.
Right.
Now, he worked on all of those things, too.
Yeah, you have to.
But he started out simply knowing that he had to overcome differences in people who were more athletically gifted,
Right.
Had certainly been described as having more potential than he did at the time. But he is now, probably the greatest quarterback perhaps ever to play in the National Football League because of the same thing you were talking about.
Yeah, I agree.
And the capacity to learn. And the capacity to be disciplined, and the capacity...
and to want to. I think it's a choice that we want to learn.
Yeah.
It's not like it just
Somebody's
happens.
forcing you to learn.
Yeah, I think that's what makes those athletes great, is that they choose to want to get up in the morning and learn and get better and know and accept their weaknesses. It was one of the shifts I had in my career was also realizing what those were in order for me to improve on them, in order to get me better.
You won Wimbledon when you were 18.
17.
17.
Yeah.
But 17, a Grand Slam, Wimbledon. How many years ago? That was, you're now 30...
No, 30.
13 years ago. Has it worked out the way you wanted it to work out? And if not, how do you hold yourself responsible?
Yeah, I think as a young girl, I never... I knew that Wimbledon and the U.S. Open, that was the top of the top, and that's where I saw myself, and that's where I wanted to do really well. I wanted to hold those trophies. I wanted those championships. But what I really wanted, I wanted to get through the day, and I wanted to feel like everything in that day, I did the best that I could. And something in my mind, and I also believe that it's the discipline that I learned from an early age, is that you put a string of those days together, and you will get there. And so I never set a plan for myself. And I don't think, it's just not the way that I
So
function.
if you ask you at that time when you were 17 and won Wimbledon, Maria, what's the most important thing in your life? My guess is you'd say winning tennis tournaments, I would assume.
Yes.
If I ask you when you're 30, Maria, what's the most important thing in your life? What would you say?
People, relationships.
People? Really?
Yeah.
In relationships?
Relationships with people, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what
Valuable.
Of course, you can't have relationships. Yeah.
Well, really, understanding,
Are you
on
good
a
at
human
that?
level. I can always improve on that. Yeah. Definitely. But it fascinates me. I love understanding and speaking to people and picking their brain, and I think that's really valuable. The people that you hold in your circle of friends and family, those are the people that are with you. And I learned that very well in the last few years.
And how did you learn that?
Through experiences, through how they're able to lift you up when you don't have anything.
Do you believe that you could have been perhaps a better friend or a better teammate or a better any of those things? But you were so focused on winning that you didn't allow that relationship quality to
Absolutely,
bloom?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've always been very career-driven, and I think that's certainly, it's been a limiting factor in other, particularly in relationships, definitely. Because
It's been a factor in relationships because you were so obsessed by winning.
Not necessarily winning, but doing everything that I, in the future, do not have regrets. No. So I don't like living with regrets.
So looking ahead, what's possible?
Many things.
And so what are you hopeful about, other than better relationships?
I'm getting better.
Grand Slam wins?
Yeah, those are definitely there. The commitment. I hope for continued commitment from myself, the effort.
Does it get harder? Because there are more choices now?
No. I think, I've had a lot of choices in my career. I've had to make a lot of choices, and I've always chosen to be an athlete, and that's what's given me the biggest satisfaction, and something I know the best because I've done it for so long.
You do, and you do the best. I once asked Ted Williams, for example, why baseball, and he said because I did it well early on. People said, "Gee, you're good. I want to be better." And the more they said I was better, the more I wanted to be even better.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, people like doing things that they're good at.
Yeah.
You know? And one of the great early things we all should probably achieve is find something that we have great natural instincts and skills for.
It's not easy, though. I was fortunate that my parents helped me with that. You know, that someone like a Martina Navratilova was able to see a talent in me when I was only 5 years old, or the fact that my father was able to pave this way for me and find the right people for me that guided me literally to the stage of center court at Wimbledon.
Unstoppable, my life so far, Maria Sharapova. And there she is, too, right there. When she was, how old are you, 7 then, maybe?
7. This was my first year in Florida.
This is with Nick Bollettieri?
Yeah. Yes, it was. That's at the Academy. I believe that's court number 3, and my dad cut my hair there, and it looks awful.
Much success. Come back to see me anytime.
Thank you very much.
Great
Thanks for having me.
Back in a moment. Stay with us.